Hi folks, welcome to another virtual lesson. I know I said the last one was probably going to be the last one we would have to do like this and we might be back in school, but I do think this will be the last one which we'll have to go through on your own, and then obviously then after that we'll probably be back in school after Easter. So hopefully at this point you will have just completed your P4 task. And this next task is a merit task, which sort of follows on from that P4 task or that past task that you've just done. So you won't be able to do this task if you haven't done your P4. So yeah, it links into it. So a lot of the stuff that you will have used in the past task will be coming up in this merit task. So just basically this lesson as such that I'm going to talk you through is mostly just instruction. There's not really any new content here. It's basically just a load of slides with instructions and examples and how to lay this out. Like, it's not really a lesson as such. There's no new content to learn for this task, so it's quite nice. This should be quicker than the previous ones because of that. So here's what you have to do. We've got a scenario. So I've said here, the Northern Ireland Tourist Board is looking at ways in which they can increase the appeal of Portrush as a tourist destination. They've set up a competition to see who can come up with the best ideas on how to do this, and you have decided to enter. So your piece of coursework is going to be a pretend scenario, like the one I've just read, and you're going to be producing this piece of coursework as though you were entering this competition. So the M2 task. You have just completed your P4 task where you looked at the appeal of Portrush to two different types of visitors. So obviously in the P4 task, you did Portrush, you did Belfast, and you also did Fermanagh. So we're just going to be thinking about Portrush for this task. So I've said when doing this task, when doing the P4 task, you will have noticed that the facilities, the transport links, the attractions, etc., which are currently in place for Portrush. So you were doing a load of research around those 7 key aspects of appeal and how they what was in place for those for two different kinds of tourists. So I've said here, for your entry into this competition or your M2 task, you must make realistic and relevant recommendations on how Portrush could increase its appeal even more. In other words, what things could be put in place which would make even more types of tourists want to go there. Because obviously in the P4 task that you've done, you were just talking about two kinds of tourists and how the things which are already in Portrush already appeal to them. So whenever you were doing that research, or maybe you were writing about those things based on the things that you have experienced in Portrush before as you've been there, maybe like in the summer holidays, in previous years. So you should already have an idea of Portrush and what it's like. There's obviously going to be gaps in Portrush. There's going to be things that are missing, and there's going to be certain types of tourists which wouldn't be able to visit certain places in Portrush because of, say, well, this is what we're going to be looking at. You have to see those gaps and you have to recommend what could be done differently, what could be improved on to make Portrush appeal to a wider set of tourists. I've also said here at the bottom of the yellow box, D1 or D is distinction. D1 is also linked to this task. To achieve a distinction grade, you must be able to make a strong argument about what would increase the appeal of Portrush to different types of visitors and justify your ideas. You will complete this as a separate piece of work after M2, but it's worth thinking about this whilst you're doing this task. So the reason I've mentioned that is because the distinction task, which follows on after this task, will only be an option to those of you who have completed all of the past and all of the merit tasks. There's no point in you doing the distinction task if you're missing one of your past tasks or one of your merit tasks. So the reason I mentioned that there now is because a lot of you will be able to do it, and it's worth thinking about as you're doing this, because the only difference is where for the merit you are making recommendations. So you're just saying, okay, for this place they could improve by doing this. Like, that's really the detail that you're including. Whereas for the distinction, you have to make a strong argument. So you have to say, well, this would be a really good idea because it would mean that this could happen, and here's an example of it in another place because it worked really well there. So there's a different level of detail that you would have to go into for the distinction. So it's definitely worth thinking about whilst you're completing this, but just bear in mind that we will do it at the very end. If you have everything else ticked off, then you will be able to go on and do the distinction task later on. So that's your scenario. That's a basic outline of what you have to do, and this is what it looks like on the specification. So we are here, you've just done the P4 task, we're on the M2 task, and it says recommend how one UK destination might be able to increase its appeal to different types of visitors. So that is essentially what your title will be for this piece of coursework. And I've already chosen the location for you, so even though it says how one UK destination, you will be writing about Portrush throughout it. Right, so here's another few pieces of instruction for this. You must produce a written piece of coursework, in other words typed, which introduces your recommendations on how Portrush might increase its appeal to different types of visitors. You must make a recommendation for each of the 7 key aspects of appeal, which you talked about in your P4. So essentially there's going to be 7 parts, and for each key aspect of appeal you must recommend something that's going to make it better for a different kind of tourist. So you must write one short paragraph for each. That's basically what I've just said, for each key aspect of appeal, stating your specific ideas for each aspect, and saying which type of visitor that it would attract. Your entire M2 recommendation report should be around 2 pages long, like average size 11 writing. So in other words, this will not take you long. It's not a big task. So if you're like writing pages and pages and pages, you're probably, aiming towards a distinction if you are able to do that. But just know that you're not really required to write anything more than about 2 pages to be able to achieve your merit. And as I say, if you are able to do more than that, then you will definitely be a candidate who will be able to produce a distinction piece of work later on down the line. So if you do write more than enough, keep it, it's fine. We'll be able to pull the distinction material out of that and then put it as a separate piece of coursework. Right, so more instructions then. The next 2 slides are filled with different things to get you thinking about how to improve Portrush and attract more visitors. You can use these questions/ideas in your own coursework, but you'll have to go into more detail. Or you may have some better ideas of your own. So basically what I've got here in the next few slides is ideas that I've come up with and I've been able to piece together from what I can find. You may have really good ideas of your own, which by all means put into your coursework. What else have I said? You must have 7 separate paragraphs, one which covers each key aspect of appeal. So that's what I've said in the previous slide there. So that's basically just a sentence to get you to think about how you're going to lay this out. So each of your paragraphs will be a different key aspect of appeal. So what we mean by that from the previous coursework task is like your natural attractions, your transport links, things like that. But I'm going to remind you of them later on in this task. I've got an example piece of work to show you. So similar to how I've laid out the ideas on the next 2 slides. So yeah, on the next 2 slides, I'm going to remind you of those 7 key aspects of appeal. And I'm going to be giving you like ideas for what you could mention for each of them. But here's what you have to include in each of your paragraphs. So state what the key aspect of appeal is. So that could simply be like a subtitle for the paragraph. Write about your ideas. So what is going to make that aspect of appeal better? What thing could be introduced to Portrush to make it better? And then mention which type of visitor that idea would attract. So wait till you see. So here on this slide and the following slide, I've got loads of questions, loads of ideas for things that you should be thinking about to come up with your own ideas. Minor questions because I can't tell you what to write. So I've done this in questions so that you could essentially answer them, and then that would make up your coursework. But this is essentially what you have to do, only obviously it would be longer because like for the likes of natural attraction, I've only got a line, you would obviously be typing a little bit more than that. So those are the 7 different things that you have to cover. And then these are all just questions and ideas that I've sort of tried to come up with to help you. So I'll talk you through like the first one, but I mean, you can read through all of this on your own. So the first key aspect of the PID is visitor attractions. So if you think about the main attractions of Portrush, now that Barry's no longer is there, what do you do? What do you go to Portrush for? Well, I mean, maybe the beach, but you know, there isn't that aspect of you know, an amusement park or an amusement setup anymore. So they could build new attractions, is what I'm sort of suggesting there. What could they build? Why would they build that? So think about the attractions in Portrush that you might have enjoyed in the past. So like, have you learnt to paddleboard in Portrush? Have you went to Barry's and like obviously it's no longer there, but or like, you know, there's loads of food and restaurants in Barry's. Like that's to get you to think about what is already there. Dinky Donuts, that's one of the big things that like people love to go and get in Portrush. Could they improve on these current attractions? So it doesn't need to be something new. It could just be something that, you know, is done to a current attraction to make it even better. So that's what I've said. Could they make them more accessible to people with disabilities? Could they make current attractions more appealing to maybe non-English speaking people from abroad by providing audio guides? So I've mentioned 2 types of visitors in those last 2 lines. So people with disabilities and non-English speaking visitors. So that's sort of the thing that you have to do. So you make your suggestion and then you say, well, that would appeal to this type of customer because it would, you know, make it more accessible for them. And that's essentially all you really do for each of the key aspects of appeal. Like I say, I've got a whole other load of questions, ideas for you to think about on the next slide as well. You don't have to include all of that. So like, don't think to yourself that you have to go through every single thing on that slide and include it in your coursework. You don't. You just need 1 or 2 ideas for each key aspect of appeal. So there's more than enough there to get you started. And as I say, you might even have better ideas than what I've come up with. So by all means, include them. So all of this stuff on these 2 slides is essentially the same as what I've just read through in that paragraph. It's questions and ideas that I've sort of come up with off the top of my head, and just to get you started. So that's the purpose of those 2 blue slides. Other things to consider, other things to think about. Is Portrush popular all year round? Is it popular in all weather? What things could be put in place to attract tourists on rainy days and in winter time? So the answer to those first 2 questions is no, it's not. So like whenever Barry's was up and running, it closed down throughout like, you know, the school year. You could only really go in the summer holidays. In all weather, no, because certain things are outside and you couldn't like go on the rides and stuff if it were raining. And obviously that's just like one aspect of Portrush, i.e. Barry's. But it was a big aspect which drove a lot of people towards Portrush. So I've said what things could be put in place to attract tourists on rainy days or in winter time. So think about things which you could do on rainy days / in the winter. So I've come up with these couple of ideas. Like if you think about it yourself, what would you do with yourself on a rainy day in the winter on the weekend if you had free time and you had, you know, money to spend? You would go to like the Jet Centre in Coleraine because it's all indoors. Jet Centre in Coleraine, if you've never been there, it's like got amusements like dance mats and like air hockey machines and like you collect the tickets. You know, it's that sort of vibe where you know, it's indoors and that's something that can be done on rainy days. So that's the sort of suggestion that you might make to bring to Coleraine because it's accessible all year round. Whereas you don't really have a lot of that in sorry I said Coleraine there, bring to Portrush, because you don't really have one of those in Portrush. Shopping centres, like that's what I would do on a rainy day. I would go to the Abbey Centre because it's all indoors. We Are Vertigo, so you've bound to have heard of We Are Vertigo. It's all indoors. You know, you can do the trampolining and there's probably loads of stuff since I've been there, but like it's indoors and it's something that you might want to do as a tourist. So that's maybe a suggestion that you could make to bring to Portrush. And then you have to think, right, well, where would that go? Which key aspect of appeal would that go into? Probably the top one, visitor attractions. It's not a natural attraction, so you have to also think about that. If you've got these ideas about what you could bring to what you could bring to Portrush, you have to then think about, well, which key aspect of appeal is that as well. I've also said, remember that this is a merit task. That's not a task. And it is simply asking you to give your ideas at this point, so you don't need to go into too much detail. The distinction task which follows it will require you to justify why your ideas would increase the appeal, and that requires a lot more detail. And like I say, it does no harm in thinking about this as you're doing the merit task. So if you've got loads of detail and you want to start writing things down, do it, but know that you're only going to get as much as a merit for this. And then when you come to do the distinction, I'll say to you, right, you'll have to pull all this information out and then move it across to the distinction task separately. And then if you're using any websites to get information from, include the link of the website at the end of your work by copying and pasting the link or the hyperlink. So if you find any information online, like say you're making reference to the Jet Centre in Coleraine, because it has a nice description on its website, you then need to include that in your coursework. So please don't forget to do that, okay? Right, the next 6 slides are giving you other ideas which you may want to include in your paragraphs. These ideas are based around the different types of visitors instead of the key aspects of appeal. So don't get confused with these next few slides. I've just mentioned all of the visitors because you might be stuck for, oh, well, I haven't talked about that type of visitor, or I haven't mentioned something that would attract this kind of visitor. So you lay it out like this. You have to mention the types of visitors within each one of those 7 key aspects of appeal, okay? So I'm saying this is to get you to recognise some of the needs which different visitor types may have, and to see if they would be met if they were to go on holiday to Portrush currently. So I'm not going to read through every single one of these, but as you can see in the top title part of each slide, I've got different types of visitors. So this one's about non-English speaking visitors. This one's families with teenagers, people with specific needs, business people, family with younger children. So within each one, you can see that these are things which would, appeal to this type of customer. And there would need to be those things for that type of customer to go somewhere. So like, let's say non-English speaking visitors, if you were visiting in a country where you didn't speak the language, you would need to ensure that everything that you wanted to do would have one of these. Or that the staff would be able to communicate with you in your own language, just to make life easier for you. Leaflets and other brochures and things like that in your own language. Yeah, so basically this is just to get you to think about other things that you could include throughout your 7 paragraphs. So you can read through them on your own. What else? So the next slide is part of a sample piece of work for this M2 task, as well as the D1 task. So remember how I've said that the distinction is linked to the merit task that you're going to be doing at the minute. I've only given you the example for the first 3 key aspects of appeal because I don't want to give you a full piece of coursework. This sample is also about Belfast instead of Portrush, and they've included the merit and distinction task in one piece of work. So basically their justifications will be included in each paragraph. You are doing your merit and distinction task separately, so yours will not be as detailed as this example. Do not look at this example and think, oh my god, that's really detailed. Yours does not even need to be half the length of these paragraphs, okay? Remember that your justifications, your D marks, your distinction marks, will be in a completely separate piece of coursework. But like I say, if you are doing the D task, you are doing the work and it is distinction level, leave it in and I can tell you to separate it later on. So use this as a guide to how to lay your coursework out for your ideas and ways in which you can word your coursework. So basically you can't copy this because it's about Belfast and you are doing Portrush. So the point of this is just to see the layout. Do not copy it, otherwise you would fail the piece of coursework due to plagiarism, plus it's not relevant to you anyway. So this is from the exam board. So like every school who does BTEC Travel and Tourism will have access to this. So if you do copy it, it's going to be really obvious if your coursework is chosen for verification later on down the line that it's, you know, it's similar to the sample piece of work that teachers have access to. So bear that in mind. This is for the layout. So you can see that the title is that thing way from the beginning. Remember how I said use this as your title? So that's what they've done as their title as well. Recommend how you're just going to say Portrush might be able to increase its appeal to different types of visitors. Oh, and look, and justify their recommendation. These recommendations, you don't have to do your justification yet. There's a D task as well as a merit task, so you don't have to do that. Just copy what I've got in that other slide as your title. They have also put a nice introduction, which is really nice, and they've mentioned that, you know, Belfast has all these things, however there's gaps for people with specific needs, non-English speaking visitors, etc, etc. Now, like I said, I have only given you the first 3 key aspects of appeal in this example, partly because it's so long. Like, this is all key aspect of appeal 1, which is visitor attractions. Yours is not going to be this long, but remember that theirs is a merit and distinction all in one, so don't let that put you off. So you can see they've done visitor attractions, natural features, accommodation, and then the remaining few key aspects of appeal would come after that. Now, so that's like their first part. This is like their first paragraph. They have also split it up into 3 different sub paragraphs for the different types of visitors which they're talking about. You don't need to do this. They have also done, they've done it, the merit and the distinction all in one. So you don't need to split it up that much. You just need to refer to a different type of visitor throughout your paragraph. So what I like about this though is that it's really clear. So if you do want to split it up in terms of the key aspect of appeal and then what you could improve for that type of customer, and that type of customer, you don't need to do 3. You can do 1, you can do 2, or you can do 3. If you've got loads of ideas, that's fine. But that's the way you're supposed to lay it out. And remember, yours will not be that detailed because this is a justification. In other words, they are saying why their recommendations would be good. And they're saying, here's an example of another place which has done this. So do not do this much detail at the beginning or at this point. So here's key aspect of appeal 2, natural features, and they've done non-English speaking visitors and people with specific needs. And then for key aspect of appeal 3, they've done accommodation. And then they've talked about increasing the appeal for business travellers, non-English speaking visitors, and people with specific needs. So also, you don't need to talk about the same type of visitor in every paragraph. It can be, each paragraph can be different. It doesn't matter. So that's why I've given you like all of these different ideas. But yours must be laid out and split up into your 7 paragraphs that way. Okay. Right, what else do I want to tell you? Okay, just your deadline then. So I'm giving you until after Easter break to get this task completed and submitted. This is more than enough time to complete this M2 task. So if you are behind, then this gives you an opportunity to get caught up with any missing work and get it sent to me. And then just message me if you have any questions about it. Another couple of things I will say at this point as well is don't leave it to the last minute, because from up until this point, looking at the rest of the tasks that we've done, there's people who are messaging me on the day that a task is due and they're saying, oh, I don't know how to do this, or I don't, like, what way do I lay this out? You can't expect to do a piece of coursework on the day that it is due and pass it. A lot of the time I'm getting back to people and I'm saying, this is done wrong, you need to do it this way, you need to go back and watch the video again or listen to the video again, because everything that I am doing or everything that I'm saying in these videos is essentially what I would be saying if we were in school. But the beauty of this is you can pause this, you can listen to this as many times as you want. So do not neglect that privilege that you can do this. It's really valuable for you, and there really is no excuse for people not to be doing your coursework tasks correctly, because, like I say, you can listen to this at any time, you can listen to it as many times as you want. Okay, so do pay attention whenever if you're going through these videos, and yeah, and then like I say, you can message me if I've missed something out. What else? There was something else I wanted to show you. Oh yeah, this. So this is a really good wee guide for whenever you're doing your work, your 7 paragraphs. So these 3 bullet points are what you must include in each paragraph. So you're stating what the key aspect of pain is. Like I said, it can just be like in the subtitle for the paragraph. Write about your ideas. So for accommodation, I think that there should be a 24-hour youth hostel to attract more younger people who might want to go to Portrush to have a night out like young adults, because that doesn't exist or there isn't enough of that. So you're just writing about your ideas. Then you're going to mention which type of visitor that would attract. So within that paragraph, I would have mentioned this would attract more young adults who are interested in nights out and alcohol and partying and all the rest of it. So those, if you just basically follow those 3 bullet points for each of these paragraphs and answer a few of these questions and write about a few of these ideas, that's it. It really is a straightforward task. And that's it really. And remember that if you do end up doing a lot of the justifications by accident, because a lot of people are naturals at this sort of thing, I've noticed over the years that they automatically start to justify and they automatically go into more detail and they give really strong points. That's fine. I'll maybe even tell you whenever you submit your work, and I'll say, look, you've done a lot of the distinction work within this. Perfect, leave it as it is. You've got your merit, but you're going to have to bring a lot of it across into your distinction task, which you'll do at the very end of the year. Because like I say, we're going to do all the passes, all the merits, and then at the very end, if you've got everything done, you can go back and do your distinction tasks. Okay, right, I hope that made sense. Drop me a wee message if you do have any questions about any of this. And remember that you do have 2 weeks for your Easter break, and if you're all up to date and you get this done and out of the way and submit it on time, then you can enjoy your break. But if you are behind, if you've got a few wee corrections or changes that I've asked you to make with your coursework, get on top of them. Don't leave them, because what happens is you move on to a new task and then you can't remember how to do the task before it. So like, yeah, just stay on top of things and get things fixed before you move on to something new. Okay, and hopefully the next time I'm telling you how to do coursework will be in school and it'll be face to face. Okay, cheerio.